with a 15-year loan, you pay substantially less interest, perhaps hundreds of thousands of dollars less interest with a 15-year loan and its lower mortgage rate than you do with a 30-year loan and its higher mortgage rate. But a lot of people don't take that next step and look at, oh, rather than paying down my home loan with extra principal payments, if I just invested the difference, I would be substantially better off down the road. So in a lot of cases, the more sophisticated investor chooses that longer loan duration, the 30-year. That's the way I see it. What do you see?
It's one of my favorite topics to cover because there's quite a few layers that I think can all connect. If an individual wants to pay less in interest, very easily, I'm going to strenuously advise them to take a 30-year over a 15-year and just simply apply the difference. So let's just start with the applicable version of 15 versus 30 and how it can benefit or harm, because this is what a lot of times people that go for the 15-year and wanting to pay less in interest don't understand, and it's never been delivered to them in a reasonable way, I guess. So just looking at those two, and then we'll get to the strategy of potentially reinvesting those dollars elsewhere. But just look at a 30-year and a 15-year. I am a massive deterrent against a shorter-term amortization. I hate a shorter-term amortization because all that's going to do to the individual is limit their ability to qualify later on down the road. And the reason for that is that the shorter term, as you had described, is going to yield a higher monthly payment. So when we pull credit for an individual, that's a higher monthly payment that the debt to income ratio has to support.
Right.
When in fact, if we simply just look at the two side by side, 15-year and a 30-year, equal loan sizes, the 15-year is going to have a lower interest rate, it's true, but the amortization is obviously half the amount. We've gone from 360 months, 30 years, to 180 months, 15 years. So the payment obviously is going to be much, much higher. If you take the payment difference between those two mortgage products and apply it with a 30-year fixed payment, let's just call it $500 a month, whatever the number is, and you are disciplined to send that extra $500 every single month with your 30-year fixed mortgage payment, you will cross the finish line in 15.4 years, I think is the average when you run the amortization. So you'll pay a few extra months worth of interest, but whatever. You'll never pay the higher interest that the 30-year has locked at because you've accelerated the payoff of the debt so quickly, and you've maximized your debt to income ratio and future qualifications. Never take the shorter term amortization. It is to your greatest disadvantage. I hate them. Okay. That's part one. Did you have a comment? I can see that your wheels are spinning.
That is a great answer. If you get the 30-year loan instead of the 15, if you apply an extra principal payment, whatever it would be, call it $500 plus, that you will kill off that loan, that 30-year loan, in something like 15.4 years. Yes, and you'll have the lower payment amount for your qualification going forward. You'll have more flexibility in your life. That's great. I didn't realize the difference, 15.4 versus 15, was that small. That's a great takeaway.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other piece, you kind of just hit on it, the individual's feet are not held to the fire at that higher payment. So let's say it's a rental, okay, whatever, and it goes vacant for a month or a couple of months, God forbid, or whatever may be happening. You now get to choose. You are not obligated at that higher monthly payment. You can say, okay, this month I'm not going to pay the extra. I don't It's all within your control. So you're killing like 4 birds with one stone. I really prefer the 30-year amortization for all those reasons. So now let's take it and move into how I believe, and I agree with your philosophy, taking those dollars and applying them. Because when we talk about mortgage interest, especially on investment property, okay, it's probably a slightly different conversation when we're talking about somebody's primary residence home. But for an investment property, to take that difference and apply it toward another investment, because the interest, remember you guys, we're investors. We want that Schedule E deduction, that interest deduction. And, as money goes, a 30-year fixed mortgage, even today, as interest rates are elevated beyond the 2 and 3% that people somehow fixated on, that's where interest rates should just be forever. You've got massive amounts of interest deduction, so you're paying less in taxes for that reason. There's so many reasons to stretch out that mortgage on an investment property versus extinguishing that debt. Not to mention, you want to constantly be harvesting equity, ideally, pulling cash out, borrowed funds are non-taxable, deploying them, but then taking that extra cash flow and stockpiling it for another investment, whether that just be the down payment or for other things. I just think there's so many better places that those funds can go to produce more wealth than accelerating the payoff of that debt that's benefiting you from a tax perspective and several other ways. There's lots of other ways to apply that money.
I often ask, why accelerate the payoff on a, say, 7% mortgage interest rate loan when instead you can take those savings, reinvest them into other real estate where it sounds preposterous on its face to think of the rate of return that you can get from an income property. But when you add up all the 5 ways you're paid, appreciation, cash flow, loan paydown made by the tenant, tax benefits, and the inflation profiting benefit on the long-term fixed interest rate debt, a return of 20% plus is not out of the question at all. So if it's 20, why would you pay off extra on a 7? That's 13 points of arbitrage that you could gain there by not aggressively paying down a property and instead making a down payment on another income property. You can watch this one next.